Here's a third joke, Doug. You were smelly because you didn't shower before stream.
Soviet, I may or may not have showered this morning.
I like how you wear a suit jacket for us, but not for Lena Khan.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, everybody here comes to my stream for politics and my political opinions. We all know this. However, as we also know, I don't really want to talk about politics on my stream, at least very often. But in this case, I did promise the lovely folks who helped us organize this thing that I would chat about a little bit on stream because it was actually super cool. So thank you to the folks at Win the Fight Live. Dude, we got to interview Lena Khan. That's crazy. Again, I don't want to get like super deep in it on this channel. But dude, this was so cool. Really quick primer. Headed the FTC, which basically their role is to prevent anti-competitiveness or trust busting in the United States. And under her tenure during the Biden administration, she like massively ramped up the involvement that the FTC had in tackling big corporate mergers, which I think ultimately is a good thing, especially as I researched this more. And it's funny because like for 4 years, I was just listening to all my friends and people on Twitter and the podcast I listened to be like, you know, this policy suck, Lena's policy suck, Lena's policy suck. And then I spent like 5 or 6 or 7 hours reading through all of her cases and all of her thought process. And I was like, I kind of agree. So it might sound like I'm just kissing ass because we got to interview her, but like I'm actually more of a fan, weirdly enough, after doing research about this. Anyways, this was super cool. A couple funny stories about this, and then we'll get into Hitman. Politics are dumb. Let's shoot people. Look, I appreciate your headspace, man. You're ready to watch me play video games and make bald jokes. You're not here to think about anything in the world. I get it. But hold on. Just if you could pause your brain for just 5 seconds while we talk about this very briefly. Atrioc has been like a mega fanboy of Lena Khan for so long. It's always been like the dream guest. So this was like our very first guest. We flew to New York for this because she worked in Washington, D.C. for the 4 years of the Biden administration. Now she is like an associate professor at Columbia, I believe. And so we could have done this thing remote, but we really wanted to do it in person because we thought that would just be a better interview, right? So we flew to New York for this. The fun thing was on Monday when we went, it was storming. And so Aiden, poor Aiden, he left, I think at 6 a.m. for the flight. But the problem is that the flight took off from LA and then landed in New York. But then all the storms made it so the planes couldn't deboard. So then he was just stuck on the runway for like 5 hours after landing. So he was stuck in a plane for like, I don't know how long, 11, 12 total hours, and just got annihilated by this thing. And of course it was Aiden, who just like seems to have weird things happen to him all the time. So Atrioc and I landed at like, I want to say 1:30 or 2 a.m. We also got stuck in the airport for a while. Got to bed at a nice brisk like 4 a.m. the night before this. But Aiden just like had the worst of it. We at least only were stuck in New York for like an hour and a half each. It wasn't like 4 or 5 additional hours. She is extremely well spoken and I think has a really good thought process on a lot of things. And I brought the critical questions and I think she actually answered them quite well. So I thought it was just awesome. And then yesterday we were flying back, right? Because we were only there for a day. We flew in on Monday, we did the interview on Tuesday, and then we flew back Wednesday. So it's just a lot of travel. But then the storms were still delaying everything. So Aiden had an early flight out. So Aiden went to the airport yesterday morning at like 7 a.m. and then is told his flight is delayed 12 hours. So until 6:30 p.m. Mine got delayed from 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. His got delayed from like 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. There isn't even a storm at this point. There's nothing happening at the airport. There's just no reason for the delay as far as we could tell. So he gets pushed back another like 10 hours. He's already at the airport, but he goes back to New York City, gets like lunch, and then drives back to the airport to get in the airplane. We both get in the airplane at the same time. He texted me 4 hours later. I got stuck on the tarmac before leaving for an hour or something like that. So I was like in total 4 hours delayed on the flight. For him, it's been something like 9 hours and he's still just sitting on the airplane runway and they haven't moved. And I got a Discord message from him while I'm an hour into my flight that's like, hey, my plane still hasn't left. I was like, what? We left. They said they could dodge the storm. Like, we got around it. And he was like, well, apparently we don't have enough fuel now because we've been sitting on the runway for so long to get out. So Aiden sits there it's been like 12 hours that he's been either at the airport or traveling to and from the airport. He's been sitting on the tarmac of the airport for like an additional 4 or 5 hours, something like that, just sitting there after already being at the airport earlier that day for 3 or 4 hours. And then after another 2 hours, it gets canceled and he has to go back home. So Aiden spent almost the entirety of yesterday sitting in an airplane at the airport trying to get home, and then it was eventually canceled. All day, Atrioc took an extra day and walked around Central Park and had this awesome time, and he hung out with Squeaks.
I gotta run.
Aiden wanted to get back early. He had like multiple jobs to do at home and instead spent the entire day in the airport. That's what he deserves for being involved in an interview. So the traveling around this was quite ridiculous. But I think there's politics, which is people screaming at each other. And then there's politics, which is like actually compelling, useful government functions with smart people who have interesting ideas about how to enact change. She's one of those people. That's why this felt really, really interesting to me. And so if that is at all appealing to you, I really recommend checking it out. I think what Lena Khan did is at the very least extremely interesting. So if you're curious at all, check this out. And I think Aatrox has peaked. I don't think he will ever have any experience as joyful as this. He's married. I think this is above the moment of marrying the love of his life. I think meeting Lena Khan, I'm telling you, there was more excitement in his eyes. I saw it. Love of his life, his greatest professional achievements, playing Hitman, his favorite game, meeting Lena Khan. I just think everything's going to be downhill from here. The whole time he was just like beaming. You can tell he's holding in like the big, he wants to rip the biggest smile right now. You know what's another funny thing? I am a stupid idiot. I don't know that much about politics. I've been learning a lot more this year. I've talked about this on that second channel video where I ranted about emotions and whatnot. And then Aatrox and I got to interview Gavin Newsom like a month or two ago. And Hassan, who's like been doing 100 hours of political streaming every week for like 10 years. And politics is his whole thing and it's all he does. And he's so passionate about it. He's constantly talking about it. Messaged me after the Gavin Newsom interview and was like, bro, let me at him. And you just know he's like, why did Doug get to interview Gavin Newsom? Hassan has never gotten to interview Gavin Newsom. They won't even go near him. And then I just kind of like walk my way into politics. So I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? What's everybody think about AI? And they're like, yeah, you should interview the fucking governor. And now I get to interview the chair of the FTC, like one of the most influential people. I might have said this during the Gavin Newsom thing. This is what's going on. There's like real people who dedicate their lives to politics. And I'm just some dummy who's just like there in the room all the time. When the fuck did you interview Gavin Newsom? That was like a month or two ago. Although this was a much more interesting interview, in my opinion. You dedicated your life to politics. I deserve this. I'm tripping upwards. They need a jester. Are you gonna play or were you lying? I said it would... The idea that I'm lying to people because I'm taking a few minutes to talk about a really big thing that happened in my life a couple days ago is quite funny to me. The cutscene has been skipped. That was sick. If you're interested at all, go check out Lemonade Stands. Cool as hell.